The first blow sent a jolt of white-hot pain through Aaliyah's cheekbone, the metallic tang of blood instantly filling her mouth. "You worthless!" Richard spat, his voice low and venomous. His face, twisted in rage, loomed inches from hers, eyes bloodshot and unblinking. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Their mansion in the hills stood like a monument to success, but inside its marble walls, silence screamed. Aaliyah had once called it home. Now it felt like a beautifully decorated cage. Richard's slurs weren't just racist, they were weapons. Each word, each insult, struck deeper than any fist could. They tore at her identity, at her confidence, at her sense of self-worth, like acid slowly eating through steel. She hadn't always lived like this. Once, there had been flowers, candlelit dinners, love notes tucked into the pages of her books. He had been charming, God, so charming. A white knight in tailored suits. He'd swept her off her feet with grand gestures and eloquent speeches about how love sees no color. But the cracks had begun to show within months of the wedding. Subtle jokes, comments that seemed off, a tightening of control disguised as care. "Maybe don't wear that. It's a bit much for someone like you. You got the job?" Must have been the diversity quota. "Don't talk like that. You sound too urban." At first, she laughed them off, made excuses. He's from a different background. He doesn't mean harm. He'll learn. But he didn't. Instead, the comments morphed into commands. The jokes became insults, and the love turned to loathing. And when words no longer satisfied his need to dominate, his hands did the rest. 7 years. 7 years of looking over her shoulder. 7 years of wiping blood from her lips before the kids saw. 7 years of wearing long sleeves in summer and sunglasses indoors. Lena and Marcus, their sweet, perceptive children, had learned too early how to read a room, how to stay quiet when Daddy's footsteps grew heavy. Aaliyah had thought about running. Many times. But where? How? With what money? Richard had his claws in every part of her life. He managed the finances, monitored her phone, limited her outings. Even her once vibrant friendships had withered under the weight of his disapproval. She was alone, or so he thought. What he didn't know was that his control had bred not weakness, but strength. Quietly, like roots beneath concrete, resilience had taken hold. With every insult, every bruise, Aaliyah's spirit refused to die. It simply waited. She began to collect her armor. A hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector, recordings stored in a cloud account he didn't know existed, bruises photographed with a burner phone tucked behind the air vent in her closet. She researched laws, memorized shelters' phone numbers, and reconnected with an old college friend, now a family lawyer, under the pretense of catching up. Richard never suspected. In public, she played the doting wife, all grace and gratitude. He was smug in his control, mistaking her silence for submission. He didn't see the way her eyes had changed, not fearful, but focused. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining hard. The house echoed with the sound of thunder, but inside, the storm had already arrived. Richard had come home drunk, as he often did when business stressed him out. Aaliyah had made the mistake of asking how the meeting had gone. The glass flew first, shattering against the kitchen cabinet. Then his hand followed, slamming her against the fridge so hard the magnets rained down like confetti. Her lips split, and she tasted blood again. But something inside her didn't flinch. That night, as he snored in their king-size bed, reeking of whiskey and cruelty, Aaliyah stood in the doorway and watched him. Her cheek throbbed. Her ribs ached. But her eyes were cold fire. There was no fear left. Just a grim, icy clarity. He would never touch her again. In the weeks that followed, she operated like a ghost in her own home. Quiet, unseen, always watching. She moved funds into a hidden account, made copies of important documents, packed small bags for the children, and stored them in the trunk of her car. Every move was precise, calculated. She wasn't just escaping. She was dismantling him. And then, like fate had taken her side, the opportunity came. Richard announced a week-long business trip to Singapore. "Don't spend too much while I'm gone," he said, smirking as he left. She didn't answer. The moment the door shut, she was in motion. Her children were already packed and waiting with her cousin 2 towns over. She withdrew every cent from their joint account. The money he kept in private accounts? Frozen, thanks to a court order quietly filed with her lawyer friend. She left behind a note. No explanation, no pleas. Just a single sentence on crisp, white paper resting on his pillow. "I was never yours to break." But it wasn't over yet, because Aaliyah wasn't running anymore. She was coming back, not just for justice, but for everything he stole. But Aaliyah's plan was never just to escape. She didn't want to simply vanish into the shadows and start over. That would have been too easy for him. Richard had taken 7 years of her life. He had stripped her dignity thread by thread, paraded his dominance in their home like a king before a broken queen. No, she wouldn't just run, she would rise. And he would fall in the weeks leading up to his departure. Aaliyah had done more than quietly secure a new future. She had meticulously orchestrated his undoing. Using the same sharp intellect he used to praise when it served him, she combed through his laptop and office files late at night while he slept, uncovering emails, offshore accounts, and evidence of shady business deals that reeked of corruption. Every document, every illegal transaction was compiled and encrypted onto a secure flash drive. But she wasn't finished. The racist messages he had sent to colleagues, jokes laced with hate, slurs masked as sarcasm, were screenshotted, archived, and quietly sent to an investigative journalist. She even created a burner social media account that began leaking pieces of his true self, the venom behind the businessman, the predator beneath the polished exterior. Richard boarded his flight to Singapore, smug and unsuspecting. Aaliyah stood at the window, watching the rain streak down the glass like silent applause. That same night, she triggered the avalanche. By the time his plane touched down, the first wave had hit. An expose hit the national news. Wealthy tech mogul's empire built on racism and fraud. Her careful documentation, voice recordings, financial reports, surveillance footage, flooded the internet like a dam burst wide open. The third day of his trip, his company had issued a statement distancing themselves from him. His board of directors called an emergency vote. Sponsors pulled out. His inbox was filled with angry messages, his phone a cacophony of missed calls and dying connections. And then he received the final blow, an alert from his bank. All joint accounts had been emptied. His cards declined. His name was now associated with scandal, not success. He rushed home, rage in his throat, only to find the mansion dark, echoing, and empty. No toys scattered across the floor. No voices. No Aaliyah. No children. Only silence that on the dining table sat a single sheet of paper. Her handwriting was calm, elegant. "You broke me slowly. I ended you quickly." Richard screamed. He trashed the house. He called everyone, her family, her friends, her old job, but no one answered. They had all been warned, protected. She had vanished, and she had taken the children with her. His private investigators found nothing. Not a trace. Her digital footprint had been wiped clean, her phone lines dead. Even her maiden name returned no records. And then came the subpoenas. Authorities began investigating his finances. The IRS opened a file. Former employees came forward with stories they had been too scared to share before. Investors sued. The empire he had built, brick by brittle brick, collapsed under the weight of his arrogance that he was arrested 6 months later. Tax evasion, fraud, civil rights violations. The charges piled up like snow on a corpse. No one visited him in prison. No one spoke his name without disgust. Years passed. In a quiet coastal town thousands of miles away. Sunlight poured through the windows of a small cafe where a woman sat with a cup of tea and a gentle smile. Her children, older now, stronger, laughed at a nearby table. The air smelled like freedom and fresh pastries. On the mounted TV, the news played muted footage. Richard Monroe, disgraced tech mogul, denied parole. Sentence upheld. Ruined, forgotten. Aaliyah watched without flinching. A faint scar still graced her cheekbone, barely visible beneath soft makeup, a silent reminder of what had been. But her eyes told a different story now. There was no pain in them, no fear, only peace. Victory. She didn't need applause. She didn't want revenge sung from rooftops. She had survived. She had outsmarted the man who tried to erase her. And now, in the scarred silence of her past, justice echoed loud and clear.